Personally, I'm a big fan of Oink games. They managed to pack a lot of game in these little cute-looking boxes. They have great components and very often very strong, very simple yet very effective designs. And it's no secret that also Deep Sea Adventure by them is one of my favorite games, period. That's it. I said it. So I was very excited when I learned about Moon Adventure that appeared to be a cooperative version of Deep Sea Adventure, and after playing the game I can tell you that is partially true and partially not, meaning there definitely are concepts in common between Moon Adventure and Deep Sea Adventure, not just the title but the general look, but this game is more sophisticated, more complex, has more rules. They packed an ungodly amount of components in this box. I don't know how they can do that. They cast a spell, I guess, because that must be breaking some laws of physics, and yet it works. So, Moon Adventure is a cooperative game inspired, I would say, by Deep Sea Adventure with the general look, but with more choices, more decisions. It plays with 2 to 4 players, allegedly, but you can play it also with only 1 player, and that's how I played it. Actually, 2 to 5 says here. Yeah, that's good. It plays also solitaire because I played it that way. First I played solitaire to learn the game, then I played with my kids, so I played with 3 players, and they didn't enjoy how hard it was, not because of the rules, but how hard it is to win. And then I played it solitaire more until I finally won, maybe like 10 times in. This is a game that is hard to beat, and that's good. I like the idea. So, speaking of the idea, we are trapped on the moon base. There was a storm that destroyed our supplies. Now we need to go out and look for supplies to be able to survive until rescue comes. So players will start from that tile, they'll go down this track, they'll collect these tiles. When you collect a tile, you replace it with a token like this so that you cannot collect anymore, but the length of the track remains the same. And players need to, after they collect a number of these tiles, need to make it back to the base. If somebody dies out there and you die of suffocation in this game, if you die out there, then everybody loses. So don't let everybody die. If players survive and make it back to the base, then they flip these tiles face up. Some of these tiles actually are dots. They represent components that look good enough as you were grabbing them out there in the lunar desert, but turn out to be completely useless. And some of those actually do work. Now you can see these tiles are numbered 3, 4, and 5, showing different sections of the board. 3 have the largest or the worst ratio between dots and functioning components. 4 a little bit better, 5 are the best ones. But to get to this section means you're going furthest from the base and you're more likely to die of suffocation. Because every turn that you're out there, you will need to spend a card representing a tank of oxygen. You have 5 slots here where you will place your items. You start with tanks, and then as you collect these tiles, and if you really collect a number, they will also take up space on your personal load. So the more tiles you collect, the less oxygen you can carry. Very interesting mechanic there. If you start your turn without any oxygen, you die and the game is over for everybody. That check applies at the beginning of your turn because it may happen that you end your turn without any oxygen and somebody rushes to you and they give you oxygen at the last second and you start your turn that way. And then they start without it and they die, maybe. But so that's definitely an important idea. So at the beginning of your turn, so the idea is, again, we're trying to win. Everybody must survive. And once everybody's back at base, you check how many actual functioning components you collected. And if you have enough, and that number is based on number of players, you win the game. So at the beginning of your turn, you play an oxygen tank card from your supply. They have 2 or 3 cubes on them. These cubes represent action dice. These are special dice. They only have 1, 2, and 3 pips on them, repeated twice. So suppose that I played This card here, this gives me 2 action dice, and I roll them, and that's how many action points I generated. And then, this reminds me, of course, of Pandemic, even the graphics here. And then you have the actions that you can take. You can pause so you have a quick reference about the actions you can take. So you can spend your action points in any order you want. Complete freedom there. For an action point, you simply move a space in either direction. That's it. Something super important, you leapfrog on a lot of different things. For example, if there are other players there, you jump over them and you don't count that space. Being able to move efficiently is one of the keys to not die too much in the game. You're still gonna die a lot, pretty much, probably. Also remember, oh yeah, we need to not die, so 1, 2, 3. And actually you can take for three action points is to activate an oxygen station. If a player is on that space, they can spend actions, they can replenish oxygen. Actually, that is a free action that you take at the end of your turn. So you need to be on that space, but again, because of the leapfrogging element, it means that somebody is there. They cannot stop there. Somebody else is there. When you draw cards, you will draw them from this deck. Pretty good, right? Oh, look at me, I'm replenishing my oxygen. However, some of these cards, oh no, are magnetic storms. So when a magnetic storm card is drawn, the oxygen station stops functioning right away. So you were hoping to get an oxygen tank because you had none. And the first card that you draw is the magnetic storm. That's pretty bad because you got to figure something out. Someone needs to bring you oxygen. Also, every time you reshuffle the deck of oxygen card, an extra magnetic storm card is placed in it. So it gets worse and worse as the game progresses. I like the nice sense of mounting dread. So here are the actions. Remember, move, activate an oxygen station, replenish your oxygen, gather supplies, which is to, for 3 action points, you take a tile. Oops, I shouldn't have revealed that. That was a mistake. You take a tile that is next to you and replace it with one of these things. For 2 actions, you develop a connector there, develop a route, which is you place a cube there and simply you skip it. That makes moving more efficiently. You also, when you're next to another player, you can also share a container, meaning for an action you can take or give one of these cards to one another, and that is how you grab or give oxygens to people in need. You also may abandon supplies on your way home in case, usually in your way home, maybe you have a better one, you want to open a new slot, or you need the oxygen. So that's the general idea. It seems pretty simple, but it's definitely already more complex than Deep Sea Adventure because you are moving on the board, creating oxygen stations, trying to replenish your oxygen, manipulating the board in various ways, and just try to collect as many of these tiles as possible without dying. There's a lovely lunar rover here to make it alluring, appealing, to try to reach the back of the track here with all of these awesome 5 level tokens. When somebody gets in the lunar rover, then there's kind of like a special kind of thing that from that moment on, their actions are limited. They cannot, for example, gather things anymore. But what they can do is they can move 2 spaces for 1 action point. Oh, another thing. So again, we want everybody back to the base. The rules don't say explicitly what happens when you're back to the base. It seems to be implied that they have to keep spending oxygen. I checked that online, but in this regard, the game works like Deep Sea Adventure, where when you're back on the submarine, you're pretty much out of the game. And the same is mercifully true here, meaning once you are back to the base, you don't have to spend oxygen, your turn is skipped, and that's important, otherwise it is even more brutally punishing. This is the general idea. Move around, collect, create stations, collect tokens, make movement as efficient as possible, try to go back to the base with as many tokens as possible without dying. and then you see how well you did. So this is the general idea. As I said, this game is more complex to play than Deep Sea Adventure, but no more complex than, say, Pandemic. I mean, you got the action points. If anything, the way the board acts is a lot simpler than Pandemic, because really the only thing that is thrown at you is Magnetic Storm. Other than that, it's all about the fact that the resources are scarce. So it's still simple to play, although more complex than its older sibling. And it's a lot of fun, especially if you like dying of suffocation on the moon. Then look no further. We got a game now that makes that real feature, not a bug, a feature, because it happens too much for that to be a bug. You have interesting strategies. You have a very fun, interesting puzzle. And again, one that, as I said, you can play perfectly solitaire. You just take two scientists out there, you take two different characters, and you optimize your puzzle. Another thing that reminds you of Pandemic and increases replay value is that you have unique characters with unique abilities. So these characters, they do different things. One of them, for example, has a robot that they can move, and again, that can be leapfrogged, therefore increasing the efficiency of movement. The veteran can collect a tile for only 2 action points instead of 3. Definitely this character is one of my favorite. You have a character with an extra card here to indicate the load capacity. So with different characters, you do have different challenges and different abilities. There's one very situational that gives you extra action points if you roll all numbers, all the same numbers on all dice. So if I rolled a double or a triple, then I get 3 action points. Very situational, too much for my taste for a game that has such a tight economy of actions. So it's fun. If you like interesting cooperative games or solitaire games, then you have a game here with interesting components, with a lot of this might sound like a pun, but there's a strong atmosphere here. Of course, you die because you can't breathe, but the sense of almost like a thriller in space is pretty strong. I would say the game feels surprisingly thematic because of that. I know what is this. I don't know what this is obsession with this designer about. People dying brutally, suffocating, but. The cooperative element works very well. What I found here, some of the things that I like the most in Deep Sea Adventure, and the thing I like the most in the game is how the game plays on the human greed. You think you can do it. You take just that extra step and you can do it. You get what you want and you go back and you'll make it and you'll die. The game really, just like Deep Sea Adventure does, it tricks you so much, and it teaches you self-restraint. It teaches you moderation and be humble and don't overstretch. Don't do too much, because it's not going to be as good as you think. You add to the general idea a very nice economy of action points, which is one of my favorite mechanics in games because of the flexibility it gives you. Then you have a really strong game. Then you have a really strong design. Definitely enjoyed Moon Adventure a lot. Again, I played it mainly solitaire because my kids were around and my friends weren't, and so that's how it went. And I like to play games solitaire. But another thing that may be good for many of you is, again, I found this game really difficult to win. Simple to play but hard to master. I died a lot, and maybe there's some obvious strategy that you'll figure out right away and I haven't, and so I'm just lucky that way because I enjoy a good challenge. But it seems to me a pretty hard game, which I say as a positive. Again, some may not like it, but to me it is a positive. If I'm playing a cooperative solo game, I want the challenge to be good, and this one is one such challenge. Definitely a fun game. I definitely enjoyed Moon Adventure.